Creative Babble.
Hi, this is Patty Hester at Fitness for You. I'm coming.
Patty Hester is a 70-year-old fitness instructor outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. I'm offering functional stuff, and I'm so excited.
I'm in my mid-40s, and I try to eat right and work out a few times a week. But I would have a hard time keeping up with Patty.
I fell in love with that. Remember the old school, step classes? I remember going to the gym and doing the old school ones and fighting for a spot. But this is totally different, and this takes it up a notch.
And kick it up she does. Patty teaches hour-long fitness classes multiple times a week. Step, Zumba, full body, you name it. She's full of life. But back in 2010, Patty came to terms with dying.
I had a few bouts of pneumonia. My internal medicine doctor said, maybe we need to see a hematologist.
A blood doctor.
So I said, yeah, okay, I'm willing to do that, of course, which was Fareed Fata.
Dr. Fareed Fata. Does that name ring a bell? He's the doctor featured in Season 2 of the Dr. Death podcast. For over 9 years, Dr. Fareed Fata built a reputation as one of Michigan's top oncologists. His patients trusted him with their lives, believing that they were in the hands of a compassionate, skilled doctor. But that trust was built on a lie. Between 2005 and 2013, Fata deliberately misdiagnosed more than 550 people. Honestly, some estimates are even higher than that, in the thousands maybe. Fata told healthy patients that they had cancer, just so that he could profit off their fear. He subjected them to infusions, chemotherapy, radiation, and invasive treatments, keeping them sick and the money flowing. By the time he was caught, he had stolen over $34 million from Medicare and other private insurers. Not just robbing the system, but robbing his victims of their health, their dignity, and in some cases, their lives. At the time, Patty Hester had no clue.
So I looked it up. Nothing. You saw no former cases of anything questionable, nothing at all. And so, I felt like I was doing my due diligence, researching anybody that I'm going to see.
Patty wasn't worried about having cancer. She just wanted to rule it out.
And by then I was feeling better. So I went in and saw him, and he was very soft-spoken. He, ordered lab draws. I'm well now. I'm not sick. I just did it as a follow-up since I did have these low lab counts. But he said, we'll see where they're at.
She draws blood for the lab and leaves. Pretty routine stuff.
He told me that my labs were abnormal and that I needed a bone marrow biopsy because it's showing like symptoms of, maybe leukemia.
Patty Hester is sitting in Dr. Fata's office, terrified. There was no time to process this. And now she has to do a bone marrow biopsy right then and there?
He did the bone marrow biopsy. It was really painful.
A week later, Dr. Fata's office calls her back in for a follow-up. This time, Patty tells her husband to go with her to the appointment. They walk in and wait, and wait, and wait. After 2 hours, Dr. Fata finally comes in.
When I came returned for the results, like a week later, he said that he had bad news for me and hopeful news for me. And he said, you have myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS.
MDS is when the bone marrow fails to produce enough healthy blood. Dr. Fata pretty much told her that this is a rare blood cancer and that she didn't have much time to live. If she plans to slow this thing down before it becomes leukemia, she needs to start chemo now. This is classic con artist 101. Scammers create fear, urgency, and a false sense of authority to manipulate their victims. They short-circuit your rational thinking and force you into making quick decisions. Dr. Fata wasn't just a bad doctor. He was a master manipulator. By telling patients that their disease was aggressive and that time was running out, he left them too terrified to question him. Just like a con artist convincing a victim to drain their bank accounts before a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity disappears. Fata made sure his patients didn't have time to get a second opinion, to stop and think, to realize that they were being played. And in the end, he wasn't just stealing their money, he was stealing years off their lives. In today's episode, we are going to hear Patty's horrific story and show you just how messed up the U.S. healthcare system really is. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else. Life moves fast, especially when you've got kids. And when my kids were little, I told myself that I was going to look into term life insurance, but I put it off, and before I knew it, 13 years flew by. But now I have no excuse, because I found out that it literally takes minutes to get coverage. While life can be overwhelming, securing their financial future doesn't have to be. So, when it came time to apply for term life insurance, it was a no-brainer. I chose Fabric because they have partnered with Gerber Life, a name that's been around forever, for 50 plus years. That's why if you've been curious about term life insurance, you should look into Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric was designed with busy parents in mind. It's much more than life insurance. You get access to free digital wills, investment tools to plan your kid's future, and more. All managed right from your phone. And there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/pretend. That's meet.com/pretend, MEET, fabric.com/pretend. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance, not available in certain areas. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
Some say financial crime is victimless, but that's definitely not the case, especially when it ends in murder. I'm Nicole Lapin, New York Times bestselling author, entrepreneur, and host of Money Rehab. And now I'm launching a new show called Money Crimes. This show is all about the dark side of finance, and most importantly, how to protect yourself from it. From cunning Ponzi schemes to cutthroat politics and even murderous con artists, you'll learn that the finance world is more dangerous than you ever imagined. Money Crimes is a Crime House original powered by Pave Studios. New episodes release every Thursday wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Money Crimes.
Patty Hester will never forget when Dr. Farid Fata told her,
If we don't address this, you can convert over to leukemia.
"Is this what you were expecting? Is this a news that you were expecting?"
No, not at all, because I did not feel sick. And I know there's many times people have cancer, but this is a blood cancer. And, that's all you treat it was blood cancers. So I'm dependent on his results, but I don't. The way I feel doesn't coexist with what he's saying about my diagnosis. Doesn't make sense.
People with MDS, otherwise known as myelodysplastic syndromes, typically feel exhausted, weak. They start losing weight, they bruise easily. Patty didn't have any of these symptoms.
He said, according to my results of my bone marrow biopsy and my labs, that I need to start chemo right away. And my husband's looking at me and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Just draw my blood today, because I really, honestly, I do not feel sick. I mean, I'm not tired. I'm not fatigued. I'm not bruising easy. I'm not short of breath. My asthma's under control. So just draw my blood today, which they did. Oh, my lady, today is your lucky day. Your labs are good today. But we need to start you right away on iron. And then we're going to go into IVIG. But first, we're going to start with iron. But you will need to start doing chemo.
But Patty knows her body. What this doctor is telling her just does not jive with how she feels. If she had cancer, she would know.
Because by then, I'm feeling really good. I haven't been sick. I'm working full-time in the ER and teaching fitness classes on my days off.
So she refused chemo.
So this kind of took my husband back. When we got in the car, he's like, I can't believe he's world-renowned. He's telling you need to start chemo and you don't want to do it. I see the bone marrow biopsy, but it doesn't. My labs are good right now. So why would I make myself sick? First, I mean, really, that was my attitude. Why would I make myself sick when I walked in here feeling fine?
And you know your body, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever think about getting a second opinion? Did that ever cross your mind?
Well, here's the thing on that, because it's funny you'd say that. My niece is an internal medicine doctor. I work with doctors. That's what I did. I worked in the hospital. I worked in the ER. You get to know a lot of people and talk to a lot of people. Here's the thing. The paperwork said is what's the results of your bone marrow biopsy. So if I went to another doctor and said, I want another bone marrow biopsy, and I just had one, the fact is, though, no one's going to do another bone marrow biopsy on me and when I just had one. Because what they're going to look at is the results. No one's going to think that someone altered your results. Nobody. My niece said, looking at your results, they do kind of look suspicious. This doesn't look good. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't feel any of these things that I researched and talked to you about. I don't feel any of this. So I agreed to start treatment, but not chemo. He gave me a weird look, like, why wouldn't she do this? I gave things away. If you're talking materialistic thing, when I thought I was dying, I gave things away to people that I loved and cared about, or a friend who needed new skis. I gave her my skis. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be needing these. My chance of living is what?
Yeah.
So I went on for 3 years to be treated by him until the day of his arrest. That next week, I was due to come in again.
On August 6, 2013, federal agents raided Fareed Fata's home and several of his medical offices.
Federal agents spent most of the day here. They left just a short time ago with easily 100 boxes of evidence.
FBI agents armed with red dollies rolled stacks of banker boxes out of the building.
The U.S. attorney announced today Fata is charged with healthcare fraud, including allegations his practice submitted $35 million in false Medicare claims.
Some patients couldn't believe it. I mean, they truly refused to believe it.
I don't believe a word of it.
But Dr. Fata gave poison to people who didn't even have cancer. And he gave poison to these people not to keep them alive, but to make money, because it was profitable for him to do that.
I think it's terrible if he's given them therapy and they didn't have cancer.
85-year-old Pat Winowski is fighting cancer in her lungs and liver. She is shocked her doctor was arrested today.
It's very upsetting because I really liked him.
I trusted him.
Are you going to get a second opinion now?
Yes, I am. I can't understand. I've talked to many people, and they say, well, why are you still on Rituxan for the last 7 years? Why, because he told me at the beginning it would be a year of treatment and 2 years of maintenance.
I twitch all the time. I shake.
To me, this is almost like he was doing genocide.
Charles Charter was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2018. He really did have cancer. After his tumors were removed, Dr. Fata put him on chemotherapy for 5 years.
After he was arrested, I consulted a couple of other oncologists, and they said that the standard protocol should have been 6 months of chemotherapy and then clinical observation after that if there was no reoccurrence, which there wasn't.
And instead, you received 5 years?
I received 5 years, yes, of continuous chemotherapy.
5 years of chemo isn't just extremely rare, it's like a 5-year war on the body. And the damage doesn't stop when the infusions do. Fatigue that never fades, chemo brain that scrambles memory and focus, nerve damage that turns hands and feet numb for life. The heart, the lungs, the kidneys, all are at risk, weakened by years of the toxic drugs. Bones grow brittle, hormones crash. Some patients even develop new cancers caused by the very treatment meant to save them. Chemo doesn't just kill cancer, it changes you. And after 5 years, what's left might not feel like survival at all.
I've developed compromised bladder, compromised kidney, severe neuropathy in my hands, feet, and legs.
It was all a lie. It was deceit.
I mean, to ask you how did that make you feel is like an understatement, because I can't even imagine. Because on one hand, your gut was right. You didn't have cancer.
Right.
You weren't sick. But at the same time, it's like you had to have been beyond betrayed. I mean.
Oh, yeah, that's an understatement. It was like, I was so angry. I mean, I was so relieved that I was going to live and see my grandchildren grow. But I was so angry. And to see my son just fall apart like that was like, and my husband, I destroyed him. It destroyed my family.
It seemed like everyone who walked into his clinic was prey. No one was spared.
One of the girls on the committee that I was on, she's a lawyer. She was a friend of his. He treated her exactly the same way he treated me. And she was young and she was pregnant.
And that was a friend of his.
Yeah. She was a young mom and she was pregnant.
Wow.
Monica Flagg, one of Fata's newer patients, was referred to see him a year before his arrest. He told her she had cancer.
He said we caught it early and that I would be on a lifetime maintenance dose of chemotherapy. So it wasn't going to be a real aggressive treatment. I was feeling fine. I continued to feel fine until I started some of my treatments with him.
But then, as luck would have it, Monica tripped and fell down the stairs.
When I broke my leg, I heard both of my bones crack. I knew that my leg had been broken in half.
And that was probably what saved her life. Normally, Dr. Fata would have overseen her care, but because he was on vacation when the accident happened, Monica was seen by another doctor in Fata's practice.
He read my chart. He looked at me very strangely. I'll never forget the look. He came back again the following day and said to me, I want you to know I work for Dr. Fata, and I want you to know you're 51, you're extremely active, you're a professional, you don't have cancer, and you need to not ever go back to Dr. Fata.
Faced with overwhelming evidence, Dr. Farid Fata pleaded guilty to healthcare fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy, admitting that he knowingly subjected hundreds of patients to unnecessary chemotherapy just to enrich himself. In 2015, he was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. Beyond his prison term, Fata was ordered to forfeit $17.6 million in asset and $26.4 million in restitution to his victims. Investigators also uncovered a hidden cash reserve of $9 million stashed away in secret accounts. Additionally, in 2016, a civil settlement awarded $8 million to 43 of his former patients who had filed medical malpractice against Fata and 3 Michigan hospitals. So what about the insurance companies? Over 6 years, Fata submitted approximately $225 million in claims to Medicare and private insurers for unnecessary treatments. They're victims in this story too. But before you feel too sorry for these guys, you won't believe what they did next.
Thank You for Your Interest is a show where people just like you and me come on and share their professional rejection stories. Think of it as part therapy, part venting to your best friend.
The stories you're going to hear are heartbreaking, hilarious, hellish, sometimes a combination of all three.
I tell them that I'm upset about this. And that was when my boss said, well, you've changed since you've had a baby.
If you think you have a story to share, visit our website at tyfyipod.com to learn how you can be a guest on the show.
That's tyfyipod.com. Thank you for your interest.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.
If you thought Dr. Fata's victims had suffered enough, just wait. This ordeal didn't end with his conviction. It only got worse when their insurance companies came after them. These patients had already endured unnecessary chemotherapy, painful treatments, and years of trauma. But instead of finding relief, they were dragged into yet another battle, this time in court. After covering the costs of Dr. Fata's fraudulent treatments, many insurance companies turned around and sued the very people he deceived, demanding their money back.
I was being sued by my insurance company. So tell me how that...
You were getting sued?
Well, yeah, because they paid for treatment that was not necessary. They were victims.
Oh, man. How is that your fault?
But they consider themselves victim. So in federal court, they show up. You know, they want money. They want to be paid because he defrauded, all these insurance companies.
This process is known as subrogation. Subrogation is a fancy way of saying insurance companies can step in and take money that they paid on your behalf. In this case, that meant going after Fata's victims, demanding a cut of their settlement to cover the cost of the fraudulent treatments, as if they hadn't suffered enough.
We were victimized once by the doctor now, and now by the system, I guess, and the insurance companies. It's very overwhelming at times.
At first glance, subrogation seems unfair, right? Victims already pay their insurance premiums, so why should the insurer take a portion of their settlement? The answer lies buried in the fine print of almost every health insurance policy. These clauses state that if the insurer pays for medical treatment and the patient later wins money related to those injuries, the insurer has the right to recover its cost. But for victims, especially those of medical fraud, like Dr. Fata's patients, this means that after years of unnecessary suffering, the money meant to compensate them is clawed back by the very same system that was supposed to protect them. But wait a minute. This is the same healthcare system that routinely denies coverage for necessary treatments, forcing patients to jump through endless hoops just to get prior approval? Yeah, the same system that tells cancer patients that their chemotherapy isn't covered, or that a life-saving procedure is, quote, not medically necessary. So where were they when Dr. Fata and Dr. Weiner and countless other doctors were carrying out one of the biggest medical frauds in history? Where was all that oversight when insurers happily reimbursed millions for toxic, unnecessary treatments? Doctors like Fata and Weiner knew exactly how to game the system. They understood that big, complex surgeries and experimental treatments, the kind that patients actually fight to get, are heavily scrutinized by insurance companies. Those treatments often get denied, buried under endless prior authorizations and red tape. But chemo? Oh, well, that's a different story. Chemo has standard billing codes. It's routine. It's predictable. And most importantly, it slides right through the system with very little pushback. Insurance companies don't flag it the same way that they do expensive and cutting-edge procedures. And that's what made this the perfect scam. Fata and Weiner didn't have to fabricate elaborate medical mysteries or convince insurers to approve risky new treatments. They just kept the chemo flowing, knowing that it would get paid without question.
If that person at the desk had got my next treatment approved, you never left the office without having your next treatment already approved by the insurance company. So they willingly paid for treatment.
Yeah. It just shows how broken the system is.
And no, there's no accountability. There's no accountability. No one's ever told me what was injected into me or anyone else. There's no accountability that the insurance company readily approved lethal drugs without any hesitation.
Here's Dr. Randy Sasek, who you heard from in part 1.
There's a relatively simple way to short-circuit trust in human beings. And it seems infuriatingly simple, the path they use. But Dr. Mata and Dr. Weiner have a lot of similarities because they're exploiting the loopholes, which are gigantic in the American healthcare system. And it's lucrative.
And there's crazy incentives to do this, which is nuts. And I mean, this story is relevant, semi-relevant to the anger that's being poured out with insurance companies,
But you're absolutely right. The anger is palpable in the U.S.
And from every direction.
Every direction.
Because the system is broken. It is obviously broken.
Absolutely everywhere.
But that's the thing. It's not even just cancer. I mean, it's just disgusting. And these are real doctors. And then, I mean, we're not even... I was doing a story, and I might pause that story because this one's more interesting, of people like holistic doctors and stuff promising, voodoo, all this stuff. That's almost expected, right? The charlatans that are out there. But you don't expect your doctor to be the charlatan, right?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you believe in or ascribe to Western medicine, you don't expect your provider, MD, DO, nurse practitioner now, or PA, you expect them to follow the Western science and do for you what's best for your health primarily.
Right.
And that is not happening.
No.
That is not happening. You said broken for the system. I think it's functioning exceptionally efficiently for the people who own parts of it and make money off of it. But for patients, broken doesn't even get there. It's a horrific, expensive killing machine right now. It's really that bad.
It's really, really bad. And it's going to hit a fever pitch already.
Yeah, and though having most of the population happy that a man got assassinated on the streets of New York, I don't know where we go more feverish from there. But it's going to happen. I think you're right.
I mean, that was a little surprising to me that how ecstatic people were. Well, I would have never put money on that people would react that way.
I wouldn't have thought people would be so publicly happy.
Right.
Yeah.
And happy is not the right word, but it's like the closest word. It's just a symbolism of the frustration.
Yeah, you don't want to say happy about a man's violent death.
No, nobody wants that.
I want what I went through and what my patient's family went through to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
I want some justice out of this. I do.
And you paid a price.
I paid a price.
Because I can't imagine, like you said, disagreeing with another doctor's diagnosis or whatever. That's one thing. But, doing what you did cost you your career possibly. I mean, maybe even voluntarily, right?
I'm happy about realizing that I can't function in the U.S. health system. But yeah, it did cost me my career in America.
Yeah.
No one's going to hire me for this. I am now forever a Judas, a snitch. And that's just how human beings work. It's affecting all of us on every level, providers, nurses, pharmacists. And it was really affecting me, and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Maybe I go to another country, but I'm not interfacing with health insurance in America again. I'm not doing it.
It works exceptionally well for the people profiting from it. For the hospitals, the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical giants, it's a money-making machine. But for patients, for doctors who try to do the right thing, it's a horrific, expensive, soul-crushing system that people up and spits them right back out. Dr. Fata and Dr. Weiner are not outliers. In fact, they're symptoms of a system that rewards exploitation. They figured out the loopholes, they played the game, and no one stopped them. Not the hospitals, not the insurers, not the regulators. And when it was all over, the same insurance companies that let it happen turned around and sued the victims. And what happens to the people who speak out? Doctors like Randy Sasek, well, they're exiled. And here's the part that should terrify you. This isn't just about cancer. This isn't just about two corrupt doctors. This is happening everywhere, in every field of medicine. Doctors performing unnecessary hysterectomies, spinal surgeries, mastectomies. It's disgusting. Most doctors are honorable. They take the Hippocratic Oath seriously and dedicate their lives to healing, not harming. But when bad actors like Fata and Weiner exploit the system, they don't just betray their patients, they betray the very foundation of medicine itself. So where does this end? When does the frustration, the anger, the boiling resentment towards the system finally hit a breaking point? Maybe we're already there. I really would like to know your thoughts on these two episodes. And if you've ever experienced anything like this, send me an email at javier@pretendradio.org. Also, some of you may be wondering, where are they now? Well, Dr. Weiner from episode 1 is still going through the legal process. There are no criminal charges against him at the moment. As for Dr. Fata, well, he's still in prison in South Carolina, and he says that his health is failing.
He says that he is not getting the medical care that he is entitled to. That is why he is seeking compassionate release, citing that he is not receiving proper medical treatment behind bars at Williamsburg Prison in South Carolina.
He has food and shelter and health care treatment. Oh, gee, woe is me. And now he wants mercy when he showed no mercy.
Well, that's it for today. This episode was written and produced by me, Javier Leiva, and it was edited by the talented Punit Shenoy with the Podcast Pundits. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week. Of course, you could always get the latest episode on Patreon or Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. And it's more than just brand new episodes. On Patreon, we really do have a community. Sometimes we listen to the episodes live together. That's a lot of fun. So if you like this show, consider supporting it on Patreon or Apple Podcasts on Pretend Plus. Thank you so much. And remember, don't forget to leave a review and follow us on social at Pretend Pod. All right, talk to you next week.
Creative power.